Hey guys, welcome to Tarantula Riff. Today's special guest is Chris Ackerman from the band Betrayal. Chris, welcome to the show, and we're glad to have you.
I'm excited to be here. Thank you for asking me to join you today.
Yeah, cool. So my first question is, when did you first start getting into music, or did you ever play an instrument, or did you always sing? How did you get into music?
It was really my family. I mean, how I really found my love and passion for music. I came from a Hollywood family. My mom was a very famous television actress, and my dad was a very famous television producer. And we always seemed to have the Beatles playing in our house growing up. That's always my memories of Beatles music playing in our house. And my brothers were into more, like, my one brother was really into like the Stones and the Who, and another one that was into more Led Zeppelin. And my godfather was a director by the name of William Asher. And in 1976, he directed a show for ABC called the Paul Lynde Halloween Special.
Okay.
And after the show ended, my parents were having a party one night, one of those Hollywood parties where all of us kids had to go to our bedrooms and stay there. And my godfather came in and he said, "Chris, I have this band on the Paul Lynde Halloween Special, and they're called Kiss, and I got you their single." And so here, he gave it to me. And this is late 1976.
Okay.
And I put it on, and the A side was a song called Beth, and it was this nice, slow, beautiful song. I'm like, yeah, all right, that's cool. And I turned it over, and the other side of it was a song called Detroit Rock City. And I'm 8 years old at the time. I play this thing, and my whole life changed. It was like, Beatles who? and that was it. Now, and that's kind of where my introduction to music got started. But my parents were always very supportive. When I was a young teenager, I played the drums.
Okay.
And I played drums in some local punk bands, things like that. And really got into that. I was total speed metal thrash head growing up playing the drums, but kind of just never went anywhere. And then when I was about 15 years old, there was a band that came to my high school, a local LA band called Triangle. And they played, and they were really good. And they played during the lunch in the quad. And I asked them, I said, "Do you guys ever need help?" And they said, "Yeah, well, you want to be a roadie for us?" And I said, "Sure." So at 15, going into 16, 17, I started roading for bands in LA on the Sunset Strip. And that's really where my jump in the music business got started.
So Chris, how did you get saved when you were a teenager? How did that come to be?
You know, it's so funny to be, and I don't know if you've experienced in your life, to be able to look back and see God's hand in so many things. And that's what I got to live. And because this has to do with Christian metal, I thought it would be good to share. And I love telling this story to Christian metalheads. So
cool. Yeah.
Way back
way back.
Way back in 1985, early 1985, I was a teenage Satanist. I mean, I had the Necronomicon, Satanic Bible. I was studying this stuff. I mean, I was involved, not just a metal Satan thing, but really getting involved in the occult. Mm-hmm. And my mom one day kind of sheepishly came into my room. You know, I used to have these metal pentagrams that I designed in metal shop in high school hanging from my ceiling in my bedroom, and inverted crosses on my wall, things like that. And my mom kind of sheepishly came in my room and she says, "Chris, I read about this band, this heavy metal band in the LA Times. They're a Christian heavy metal band. And so I went out and I bought their cassette for you." And I said, "All right, whatever." And she gave it to me, and it was this little cassette called the Yellow and Black Attack.
Yes.
Band called Striper. So I listened to it and I thought, okay, it's not really my metal. I was a hardcore thrash head, but I was like, all right, music's kind of cool. I don't know about the look, but it's cool. So I kind of listened to it and kind of put it away after a while. I listened to it a few times. And a few months later, as I mentioned, I used to live at this place called the Country Club in Reseda, California. Well, there was a band I loved on Metal Blade Records at the time called Pandemonium from Alaska. And they were doing a show at the Country Club. And opening for them was this band I noticed on the advert, this band Striper. So I went to the show, and this band Striper came on, and they're doing their show, and they're preaching the gospel, and people are throwing things at them, spitting on them. And then they start throwing these little Bibles out, and they're throwing and they're landing on the floor. People are like, I'm not touching them, but people are picking them up. They're ripping them. They're lighting them on fire. And I actually, one landed by my foot, and I picked it up and I put it inside my battle vest, which I still actually have that Bible today in my office at home. And I watched them do the show, and people are lighting these Bibles on fire, throwing them back on the stage. And these guys would not stop. They kept preaching the gospel, and they were bold in their faith. And so they ended, and Pandemonium came on, watched their show, and as life goes on. Well, at that time, I was bagging groceries at Vaughn's in Toluca Lake. And one Thursday night, I'm sitting there bagging groceries. All of a sudden, I see this guy in the line with his wife. I'm like, I know this guy from somewhere. And I'm bagging groceries, and they're getting closer in line. I'm like, who is this guy? I know this guy from somewhere. And he comes up to the line, and I go, I know you. You're the bass player for that band Striper. And it was Tim Gaines and his wife.
Yeah.
And I told him, I said, look, I don't believe in your God, but I got a lot of respect for what you did. And I told him about that night. And I said, I got a lot of respect that you guys did not back down for what you believe in. I got a lot of respect for that. Yeah. And he was so kind. And we talked, and he's like, every time we come in, we're going to make sure we get in your line. And every Thursday night, he and his wife would be there. I was bagging groceries, and they would get in my line that I was bagging in to make sure, so we could just chat. And at one point, this is a few months later, he comes to me and he says, look, I got to tell you, we're going to Japan and then Europe, and then we're going to record our first full-length album. So you're not going to see me for a while. So I don't want you to think that we're just ditching you. When we come back and everything's settled, we'll be coming back here, and we'll make sure that we, go in your line again. And I said, okay, no problem. And I still didn't believe in God at this time. But he accepted me for who I was, and always just pleasant and talk to. So at this time, I'm a senior in high school at North Hollywood High School. And there was this kid walking by one day, and he's wearing this black t-shirt, just has the Striper logo on it. And I said to him, I didn't know this kid, and because I was at the stoner group. And he walked by, and I said, oh, I know the bass player from that band. He comes into the grocery store where I work. I've seen him once in concert. And he's like, oh yeah, they're really good. Have you heard any other Christian metal? I said, no, man. He's like, no, there's a whole scene of Christian metal. I'm like, no, I only know this guy, and I'm not a believer. And he's like, well, why don't you come to our youth group? And I was like, okay, whatever. And so I started going to this Wednesday night youth group, and got turned on to a lot of cool teenage Christians and a lot of Christian metal. I remember one time walking into our youth group rec room, and there's this album playing. I'm like, dude, is this the new Iron Maiden or something? And he's like, no, this is Barren Cross. It's their EP. It's called Believe. And I'm like, oh, sounds like that Maiden, man. and so I got introduced to a lot of music, and as a lot of teenagers who don't really believe, I was only there to meet chicks. That was my main focus, to be there. But one night, it was December 15th, 1985. And we're at the end of the youth service, and as Pastor Steve always did, he would bow your heads, close your eyes. And if anybody would like to accept Jesus Christ, our Lord and Savior, please stand. And I'm sitting there, and I can feel my butt in the seat, and I'm just going like this, and I'm thinking, and just hurry up and end this. I want to ask Lori out on a date. And I'm just like sitting there, just waiting for the service to end. And all of a sudden I had that feeling that all eyes were watching me. And I opened my eyes, and I was standing up.
Wow.
And I felt myself sitting down. At that moment in my life, I said, Lord God, I've never believed in you before, but if you are real, I'm ready. And I walked up to that altar. And, back in the 80s, we had like those plush carpets. I will vow to this day that my feet were not touching, that they were just brushing the top of that carpet. They were not taking full steps in there. Something was carrying me up there. And I got up to the front, and I felt like two shoulders on my arms slam me down, and I fell, and I just all came loose, and I'm just sitting there screaming, Jesus, please forgive me. Please forgive me. Please accept me. And another person who played in our worship band, who was very big in the Christian metal scene, guy by the name of Drew Fisher. And he came up to me and put his arms around me and led me to Jesus that night. And it was so cool because the next day I walked into Vaughn's to work, and one of the checkers looked at me and she goes, something's different about you, Chris. Like there's something about you that's different from when I saw you yesterday. And I like accepted Jesus Christ as my Lord and Savior last night. She goes, that's it. And I can't imagine the shock that Tim Gaines felt, because a couple weeks later,
Yeah, I was gonna say, did you see Tim? Yeah.
he and his wife came into Vaughn's as they said they would. They got in my line, and I'm just waiting for them to come up. And they come to the line. I go, guys, guess what? I accepted Jesus Christ as my Lord and Savior. And we celebrated that night, and it was really, really, really cool. And but that's how I found the Lord. And I love looking back now and seeing all those pins to where God was there, even when I was against him, and setting that path for me to be on to accept Christ that night.
Yeah, that's a great story. When did you first get into a band, or what was some of the concerts you used to go to back then, or?
Well, I always tell my kids that I was very lucky that I got to grow up in the golden age of thrash.
Yep.
One of my second homes was a place in Reseda, California called the Country Club. And that's where I got to see bands like Slayer, Exodus, Metallica, Megadeth when they were just starting out in the clubs. Being there for Celtic Frost and Voivod for their first ever shows in Los Angeles, going to see Anthrax and DRI at the Olympic Auditorium, Suicidal. So I kind of got to grow up in that era. And that's why when people are like nowadays, like, hey, you're going to go see Metallica at SoFi Stadium. It's like, no, I paid $5 to see him in the Country Club. I'm good. Just after I got saved, the first Christian band I ever saw was the Altar Boys.
Okay.
And I thought they were just absolutely fantastic.
Nice. So yeah, I was gonna say, what were you kind of mentioned some of your influences, the early Metallica, a lot of those bands where you're like, that's a style I want to play at that point, or?
Here was the story. For me, I never planned to ever be in a band. When I was doing drumming, it was just local punk bands, getting guys in my garage, and we would just jam. And that kind of came and went. It was kind of more of a phase type of thing. But I'll tell you this great story. So, like I said, my mom was a famous television actress. Now, you probably won't know her because you're too young, but your parents and grandparents might. But there was an old show called Father Knows Best. Very popular.
I remember the reruns.
My mom played the eldest daughter on the show, actress named Eleanor Donahue. She was the oldest daughter. Princess, they called her on the show.
Robert Young and Jane White, with Eleanor Donahue, Billy Gray, and Lauren Chapin in Father Knows Best.
She was Ellie Walker on the Andy Griffith Show.
You're pretty.
Thank you.
Make good faces, too.
I've had a lot of experience. I'm Ellie Walker. What's your name?
Opie Taylor.
Miriam on The Odd Couple with Tony Randall and Jack Klugman.
Eleanor continued taking other roles in television on programs like The Odd Couple and Star Trek. Her last acting role was a gig on The Young and the Restless that lasted from 2010 to 2011.
So I came from this Hollywood family. So the reason why I'm telling you this is back in 1981, my mom was doing a guest appearance on the show One Day at a Time, which of course starred Valerie Bertinelli.
One day at a time, one day at a time, one day at a time, one day at a time.
So me and my brothers asked my mom, hey, can you ask Valerie Bertinelli if she can get us Van Halen tickets?
Yeah.
And then she did. And they said, and Valerie Bertinelli said, go to the box office. I think it was the Long Beach Arena or the Forum. So go to the box office. We'll call. There'll be tickets for you.
Nice.
So we went. We got tickets that night, and we picked up our tickets at Will Call, and there was inside backstage passes So
Nice.
we got to go backstage after the Van Halen show. I will not talk about that here. That's a whole nother story for a whole nother podcast. But here was a significant thing. At one point, I turned around, just walking around, and I walked onto the stage. And the whole stage setup was still there. The crew, because they were doing 2 nights at the arena, and the crew was kind of just settling some things in. And I asked one of the roadies, I said, can I go out on stage? And he goes, yeah, sure, man. Come on. And I remember walking out there, and I stood right where David Lee Roth would stand. And I looked out at the empty arena, and I thought, I could do this. I could do this. And I've never forgotten that. And that was always something that I've remembered throughout my whole life, is standing on Van Halen's stage in front of an empty arena, fully done with all the lights and the amps and everything, and going, I could see myself doing this.
That's a cool story. Thanks for sharing that. So when did you first start getting, or when did you get into Betrayal? I know there's like a modern Betrayal kind of transition. Can you explain some of that?
Well, what happened was, like I said, I had been a roadie, and I loved doing that. And I loved all the roading and the perks that came with it. And after I got saved in December of 1985. I was a senior in high school, and I accepted Christ at North Hollywood First Assembly of God. And I was going to college. After I graduated high school, I was going to college in Van Nuys, and I really needed to get out of LA, I felt.
Yeah.
But I wanted something that was really going to be stricter for me, to really get me to focus. So I applied for a very conservative Bible college. It was called Bethany Bible College up near Santa Cruz, California. And I went there. And so I was doing my studies there. And during the weekend, sometimes I would come back to LA, and I would hear about this heavy metal church down in South Bay, California. I was starting to hear about this, and you're starting to hear stuff in Northern California about it. So one Sunday, I went down there, and I was down in LA, and I thought, I'm going to go check out this place called Sanctuary down in South Bay. And I just drove down there, and I heard, I always thought it was so funny that they had their church service at 2:00 in the afternoon, so people go to the Sunset Strip on Saturday nights and sleep it off, what have you. And so I went there, and my very first time there's this guy who was sitting out front, and he's sitting on these little steps, and he's got really long hair, and it was this guy, Ladislav Prado. And I just started talking with him, and he was so nice and friendly. And he said, hey, I have this band in Porterville, California. We're called Martyr. And I'm like, well, that's cool. And I'm like, what kind of music? He goes, oh, we're thrash metal. I'm like, oh, good. I love thrash metal. And there's not enough good Christian thrash metal out there. Right. And he says, here's a copy of our demo tape, Death is Dead. And I said, well, thanks a lot. I appreciate it, man. I went to the church, went to the service, and going home afterwards, I put the cassette in my car, and I was blown away. Blown away by hearing this demo tape. I thought, this is up there with Hit the Light, Metal Up Your A, those kind of demos that are considered classics.
Yeah.
And just blown away by it. And so I contacted Ladislav, and I said, hey, I'd like to be involved with you guys. I'm currently living in Santa Cruz. And he's like, well, we're in Porterville, like Central California. And long story short, I started going to Porterville on the weekends and hanging out with Prado, Mark Johnson, Dave the drummer, and their whole families and friends, and just became a part of their group. And we had some great memories, and we do shows up in Fresno or the Porterville Community Center or Visalia or Bakersfield, and I would go and I would just start roading for them, and that's what I did. And then after that, I'd go back to Bible college. Well, after my second year of Bible college, things were starting to change there because at that time, Jimmy Swaggart had lost his accreditation to his Bible college. And so a lot of his students came to Bethany Bible College, where I was at. And if you remember Jimmy Swaggart, Christian music is of the devil, evil,
Yep.
evil, evil.
Striper's evil.
Yeah, yeah. Well, these students took one look at me and were like, Satan. And they used to have like prayer sessions that I would truly be saved. And that really bothered me. It really bothered me. And after my second year, I mean, literally my closest friend during my second year was a stoner that worked at the Quickie Mart down the road. I mean, it got really lonely for me because I was kind of ostracized there when these students came and their ignorance. And so after the second year, I just left and I never came back, and I went to LA. And at that time, Prado was, hey, I'm moving. Mark had left to go join the Crucified. He says, if I'm going to do anything with Marta, I've got to go to LA. I'm going to LA. Then at that point, Marcus Colon joined the band. It became from more of a punk thrash thing to more of a real metal thing. And I became their road manager. And started going. And then long story short, when Prado left, I always thought, thinking back to the David Lee Roth thing, I think I could do this, but they were stuck after Prado left the band. They were stuck. They needed a bass player and a singer really quick because they had a show coming up. And they found Jeff Lane very quickly, but they still need a singer. And
now is this Betrayal at this point, or is
this was still Martyr?
Okay,
it was still Martyr. It was still technically Martyr.
Okay.
So David got back to Porterville, and they said, we got to do a show. And it was the only show I ever did under the Martyr name. And they said, Marcus had said to me, he says, we need a vocalist for this one show. And I'm like, I don't want to do it. And he's like, dude, you're the only one that knows all the words to the songs. You've got to do it. And I'm like, nope. I'm not getting in front of a crowd. It ain't going to happen. And he's like, we need you to do this. And I'm like, finally relented. I said, okay, I'll do it. And I thought, I'm gonna do this one show and that's it. I'm going back. I like being a roadie. I like being the road manager. That's my lane. And we did this one show, and I think the only song I couldn't do vocals for was Escaping the Altar, because there was just too many and I could never learn those things. And it was kind of still a newer song to Martyr at that point. But I did the show, and I'll never forget, as soon as the show ended, Marcus turned to me on stage and he goes, we need to have a serious talk about you not wanting to be in this band. And 2 weeks later, we became Betrayal, and the rest is history for what it's worth.
Nice. Question on the name. I had a friend of mine, Kevin Crothers. He said, what's the meaning of the word, of the name Betrayal? Is there a meaning behind it?
Yes. Our ministry was to deal with kids, and when you tell this lyrically in songs like Escaping the Altar, our ministry was directly towards youth that were deeply involved in Satanism. I dabbled heavily into Satanism when I was a kid.
Really?
Marcus was very deep into it. I mean, on a whole nother level.
Wow.
Growing up. And so that was kind of our ministry. And what the meaning behind the name is we were betraying all that we learned in Satanism, and also betraying all that we learned about just growing up in this world and turning our hearts and minds towards Jesus Christ.
Nice. Oh, that's a pretty cool explanation. It's interesting because you guys were kind of deep into Satanism, so you could talk about it in lyrics and know what you're talking about too.
Yes, I was like one level down from a surface level. Marcus was on a whole nother level. You know, he talked about it. One of my favorite Betrayal songs, Fear Be Gone, which was a B-side from our first album, but that really directs what Marcus went through in his time in the occult. And you know, there's lots, I mean, really renouncement from the passing. That was the meaning behind the name Betrayal.
Interesting. So you guys together, you're practicing, and you make a demo. Where was that recorded, and what was the situation with that?
We used to have a rehearsal space that we used in Sierra Madre, California. And we would go there twice a week, Tuesdays and Thursdays, and practice. And we found this place in Irwindale, California, that was able to record these new demos. Because once we became Betrayal, we had to take songs that were like, there was a song and Prado wrote the lyrics for, Marcus wrote the music for. We had to change, make new lyrics for it, and vice versa, things like that. And then we wrote the first song that we wrote together there that we did together as Betrayal was Prophets of Baal. And that was our first track. And we found this place in Irwindale, California, and we just went there one afternoon and we belted out these tracks that became our Reviling Darkness demo.
Okay, nice. So you're passing that around, you send it to different companies, or how did that
Yeah,
work?
we would go out, Marcus would package everything together, I would go out to the post office, do the mail out. I mean, this is all very grounds roots. What really surprised me, though, with all the years I was with Martyr, they never got signed. And I was blown away. I'm like, why is this band not getting signed?
Yeah.
Now, I did find out later, talking with Prado, that they actually did have some leads to get signed and it fell through. And I cannot remember. It may have been Intense. I'm not sure.
Yeah.
Or Star Song or something like that was really interested in Martyr, but it never really happened. And it just seemed that with Betrayal, it just happened immediately. And we had some interest, and we decided to meet with Caesar Kolnowski from Wonderland Records, and we got signed. Caesar came out one time to one of our practices, and then we went to a 24-hour coffee shop afterwards and spent the whole night there talking about the contract, going over things, and finally signing.
Yep. So from the point where you started, with Betrayal started to where you got signed, how quick a time was that, give or take? Months or years or?
Months.
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 Wow, like you said.
Month. I would think I would say probably about 8 months. I mean, like I said, I was kind of shocked how quickly it happened.
Yeah. And at this point, you're doing shows, you're getting more comfortable playing, singing.
Yeah, it was funny though, because I was not the person I am today. I have a 16-year career right now as a professional sports announcer. I
Okay.
teach classes on public speaking,
Interesting.
professional MC. I do events all throughout the year for different organizations. Here's the kicker. Back then, I didn't know what to say to an audience. Oh my gosh. It would literally, and Marcus and Matt Mainers, they would take so much time tuning their guitars, tuning down to D, and I'd be on stage and I wouldn't know what to say. I was awful at it. And I'd like, just start the song so I can sing and hide. And it was funny though, watching. I have some of the old shows that I've digitized from some of our old Betrayal shows. I have a
Yeah.
YouTube channel where people can find those. And it's so funny just watching me try to talk, and I know what's going on in my head at the time. So,
Yeah.
but I was getting used to it. I took some of my mom's DNA of acting and kind of put it into what I was doing, and that helped build my confidence. And I ended up enjoying it quite a bit. I actually really liked it. Had a good time. What I loved doing most of all, though, was praying with the youth afterwards,
Yeah.
and talking to them about Christ. Band practice would be hard because I never consider myself a professional musician. I was just a guy who got in front of the mic and screamed out these words. And I loved what I got to do because I got to minister and preach the gospel.
Nice. That's awesome. I think a lot of we call them Christian metal bands. They're metal bands that are Christians. That's a whole nother discussion.
Mhm.
But I don't think you guys knew the reach, or did you know the reach that you had? I mean, I think since Facebook came out, and I hear this from a lot of the bands, they're like, I had no idea that we reached that many people, and look, the fans are still there and they remember us. And when did you realize, like, hey, wow, there's still fans out there, for us?
I didn't. After Betrayal had its untimely demise, a lot of things happened in the end, and I'm sad to say that I walked away from the Lord for over 20 years.
Oh, wow.
I became, not a Christian. I became more about self. I became a very successful business person and started thinking in my mind about, oh, I did this. God's not doing this. I did this. I've got this great career in marketing and graphic design because I'm talented. And it just kind of snowballed to where I became a God mocker, then a God hater. And things got really bad for about 20 years. Or, I didn't see it as bad for 20 years, but
Yeah.
that breach got further and further away from the Lord. And so someone asked me a couple years ago, they're like, but why? Why? I was so angry at God at the time. For one, the way the band ended.
Mm.
But I was like, God, what a waste. We didn't help anybody. We could have done this, and this, but it didn't happen. And I wasted all those years of my life, those 4, 5, 6 years of my life for nothing. We helped nobody. And in 2018, October of 2018, something happened in my life that brought me to my knees. And during this time, when I was at my lowest point in my life, I got a text message from my brother-in-law in another state. And he said, Chris, you need to ask Jesus to show you how real he is in ways you can't imagine in this situation. I said, okay, I've got nothing left. In October of 2018, I said, Jesus, please show me how real you are in ways I can't imagine. And immediately he changed my heart. And things that I felt, anger, resentment, hatred, just washed away. And that's when I began my journey back to the Lord. But it was still another year. Because remember, you have to remember at this point, these past 20 years where I'm building up this business career and becoming kind of I hate to say this, a business celebrity in my community. Nobody knew, one, I was ever a Christian, and two, that I was ever a singer in a Christian band. I mean,
Yeah,
this stuff,
thrash band, yeah.
all Betrayal stuff went in boxes in my garage and was forgotten about. And I started finally accepting and remembering. I blocked a lot of the stuff out of my mind, and I started remembering and started accepting the fact that I was once a singer or screamer in a Christian thrash metal band, and God had to get my heart in the right place. And then he started revealing people in my life saying, you were a huge influence on us. You really made a difference in my life. I was almost going to kill myself in 1993, but I listened to the passing and it kept me alive. And I started getting stories like that. And finally, I remember one time, I'm like, God, wow, we really did make a difference in some people's lives, but I needed to be at the right place in my heart to hear it and receive it effectively. Because the only time in all those years that I was in the wilderness that I ever brought out betrayal was for my son Liam, when he was 13 years old, because all he knew from his dad is a graphic designer, computer geek. And one day he said to me, he said, Dad, I bet you're a total geek and nerd growing up. I looked at my wife and I kind of winked at her, and she goes, yeah. She kind of nodded. I went and grabbed a VHS tape of Betrayal Live in Fresno, and I put it on the TV, and my son starts watching it. And he turns to me and he goes, wow, Dad, I guess you were cool once. But this is where the journey led. So yes, I've been blessed in the last 5 years to find out about the positive impact we made on people's lives. And it's really was just God working through us for the good and bad.
Yeah, just like you had mentioned earlier, and one of my friends, Kent, on another show called Area 312, he always says to his guests, and I'm going to say this to you, is you guys were youth ministers. Just like you didn't fit in school and because you were a Christian, when we were in church, same thing as you, we didn't fit in church, we didn't fit into the world. So you guys and the bands ministered to us. So we kind of looked to you. So again, that's something, maybe a perspective maybe you guys never thought of, but I just want to say thank you on behalf of the fans that you were there for us and it meant a lot, and that you were just as good or better than the secular counterparts. Not just a carbon copy. So you're like, hey, check out Betrayal, check this band out. So
and that's what makes it hard to admit, because my wife and I have this discussion a lot. She's like, you really shouldn't tell people that you walked away, because these people looked up to you, and you're basically saying that they put you on a pedestal and you're just kicking them off the pedestal. So it's always a type of thing where it's really hard for me to talk about the fact that I did walk away, and it was a hard journey back, but it was what I needed to go through, this tragedy that I went through in my life to bring me back to the Lord. And it's hard because I never saw myself as an influencer, as a youth minister. I was just trying to save as many souls as I could for Christ and preach the gospel as best I could.
Yep. So yeah, I just wanted to, say thank you to you guys in the band, and I can't say enough of what you guys did for us.
Thank you.
When again we rebels in church, I remember wearing a Deliverance T-shirt, and it had the had death with the sickle. I would wear it in church.
Yeah,
it was the funniest thing. I said, "This is a Christian band."
I still do that at my church. You see some of the shirts I wear, and they're like, really, Chris? I'm like, sorry,
that's me.
Yeah.
So going back to the debut record, Renaissance by Death. So Caesar signs you. You guys you fly to Illinois, where the record label was.
Yes. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So
and record there.
So Wonderland Records was located in this big warehouse. It was a multi-story warehouse in Elgin, Illinois, and so the musicians of the band went there first. I stayed back a couple weeks in LA while they did the drums, and then Brian Muse, our drummer, after he was done with his drum tracks, he flew home, and then I went out there and I stayed there for I think about 2 weeks recording, and that was a magical time. That was a lot of fun. We had such good memories of that time. It was hard for me, being in a real recording studio for the first time and learning how to do this. One of the worst experiences I ever had in my life was trying to do Stroll Through a Wicked Age from that album, because Marcus had wrote too many lyrics for that song, and it was so bad trying to fit it all in that sometimes it was literally syllables, and it cut in syllables, and I was just in tears half the time, and I was just like, I dread that song now to this day, just because those memories come flooding back. But there were so many great memories. One of my favorites to talk about is Mortal Flesh, the instrumental written by Matt Mainers. So there, Matt was, rest in peace for Matt, who passed away. Matt was a beacon in his own ship. I mean, that's the best way to describe it, and I loved him for that. But when he wrote Mortal Flesh, he wanted to put all these little sound samples in and do different things in that song. So at one point he goes, I want a glass bottle smashing in an echoey hallway. So we found this hallway in Wonderland Records in this tunnel area, and we have this Coke bottle, and we kept throwing it, and all of us kept trying to throw this bottle, and it would not break. And we were just cracking up. We could not get this Coke bottle to break for the life of us. And so Matt decided, he goes, you know what? I'm going to keep this in as a kind of an inside joke for us. So if you listen to the song Mortal Flesh, there's one point in the song, if you listen very closely, you'll hear this Coke bottle go ding, ling, 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 ling down the hallway. And that was us in our last turn saying, okay, we're done. We can't get this Coke bottle to break. And those memories will always stay with me, and song-wise, it was fantastic. I mean, Bleed the Blood, I always tell people that was our mission statement. Hey, you got it right there. And I absolutely a magical time within the band, was that time.
Yeah, a really unique style. I guess maybe the closest band to compare it to is The Crucified, where the way you sometimes you're like speaking and singing. It's a very unique a style that you don't really hear that even nowadays.
You know, it's so funny because I used to get so gutted when the reviews for the album came out. There were so many reviews, and I'm talking Christian publications and stuff, but I would just be gutted because most of them would say, this band is absolutely fantastic. They sound like Iron Maiden thrash metal. The only problem is their singer stinks. And if they would just get rid of their singer, they have a future. And I would just sit there with my head down and just like, and I would talk to Marcus and say, why don't you just get a real singer? And Marcus would be like, no. And I couldn't understand why. He's like, no, you are Betrayal.
Yes.
I couldn't understand it because the review after review after review would be, this singer sucks. And they got to get a real singer. But I kept doing it. And, there was no particular style that I went for. I mean, my biggest influence was like Tom Warrior of Celtic Frost. I mean, I just loved Celtic Frost. I was a big European thrash fan, so I was into Voivod. Voivod's from Canada, of course, but Voivod, those type of bands, Sodom, Bathory, those were the kind of bands before I got saved that I was really spending a lot of my time listening to. I always wanted to sing, but I just couldn't sing. I went to like 5 different vocal coaches while we were getting ready to do the passing and trying to learn how to sing, and I just can't do it. And so I just had to take what I had and do the best I could with it. And it's so funny. I see things now on social media, people saying, oh my gosh, Chris Ackerman was such a great vocalist. His style was unique, like you say, it was unique. I've never heard anything like it. It was so cool. And I'm like, huh?
It's kind of like punkish.
Yeah.
Raw, and I don't know. It works. It just worked.
And I appreciate, you know how much it means to be appreciated, be compared in any way to the Crucified, because in my opinion, the Crucified was the greatest Christian metal band of all time. There's nothing betters them, in my opinion.
Yeah, they're a great band. I had interviewed Greg Minier on one of my interviews. Check that out when you get time. But super cool guy, and I always tell him, I'm like, Pills of Humanity is probably, now I'm not really a punk fan. I'm a more of a heavy metal thrash fan.
Sure.
But man, it's a perfect fusion of thrash and punk. Again, I have not heard a record like it. And again, I think Betrayal's in that same ballpark. Like they're in that same field. So
yeah, we had I remember the early Martyr days. We did a show at the Porterville Community Center, and it was Martyr and the Crucified from Fresno, California. And they had at that show, they were selling their take up the cross demo. And I bought it, bought a shirt and everything, and I put that demo tape in my car. I'm like, come on now. This is it. This is incredible. And and I love Pillars of Humanity, but there's something very special to me about the debut because I saw those songs live a lot of the time. Jeff Ballou, their second bass player, what a wonderful, wonderful person. I never had the chance to really connect with Mark or Jeff or even Greg for that matter. I think Greg a couple times, but it was really Jeff. He's such a sweet person, and he and I just got on famously.
Nice. So, Chris, on Renaissance by Death, I noticed looking at your old demos and old posters, the Betrayal logo was different than the record. So, did the record company overrule you on that, or how did that come to be?
Yeah, you got it right there.
Yeah.
Jeff Lane, our bass player, actually he designed the logo for the original Betrayal logo. The cool one.
Yeah.
And after we got signed to Wonderland, they showed us the artwork for Renaissance by Death. And I remember looking at it going, the heck's with this logo, man? Where's our logo? Basic bottom line is they thought our logo stunk, so they had a new one created. We thought that one stunk and wanted our old one. So that's really the story in a nutshell. I mean, they just, when you sign to a record company, you sign a lot of your rights away, and that was one of them. They had full creative control, the artwork design, the album cover design. There was no.
I mean, the covers. the cover's cool. And not that the logo's fine.
Yeah.
But once I saw the original, I'm like, oh, that's so much better.
And you can see the guy hanging upside down, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
What do you mean?
Okay, look behind the painting.
Where, like, right? Oh, I can't see it.
Yeah, the orange part on the
Oh.
outside. That's the designer hanging upside down screaming.
That's
Why?
crazy.
I have no idea, but that's what the cover was.
That's crazy. I mean, it's fine. It's not like it's horrible. I mean, I've seen
No, but, it was just kind of we just had to accept it. This is our logo now.
It's
And
like
that's
I never understand that because your old fans that you've grown up playing in clubs, they know your logo. So if
Yeah.
they saw your record in the store and they saw your logo, like, oh, they got signed, let me pick it up. And then
Yeah.
then the record companies always change it. Living Sacrifice, Darren Johnson had the same story. He's like, that's not our logo.
yeah,
But
yeah, and
I think
that's
Sacrament
what they
too.
gave us. So
now, did you follow any of the? I know you knew of the Crucified, but did you follow? Were you following the Christian metal scene at all?
Oh,
or not really.
Oh, I was very, very involved with it. Not, Marcus really had like personal relationships with bands. I mean, he was a networking guy back then with the bands. Me, not so much. I get, at one point I found out there was a rumor about me that the rumor, it was kind of like, because someone mentioned, oh yeah, he used to go to Bible college up in Santa Cruz. And so the rumor kind of grew that I lived in Northern California and I just flew down for gigs. So I had a girlfriend / fiance at the time of Renaissance by Death, and she was not into metal at all. She was from Guatemala. She was more into pop music. So she didn't really care to be part of the Betrayal scene.
Mhm.
And so I didn't spend as much time. So I developed more one-on-one relationships with people, in the scene. For example, Victor from Tourniquet
Okay.
was someone I would consider a good friend. Chris Scott from Precious Death.
Yep.
Jeff from the Crucified. So I loved going to the gigs, loved hanging out with people, but I more had just one-on-one with different people as it may.
Yeah. That's cool. Yeah, because sometimes bands follow the scene. Sometimes bands I was too busy. I'm doing my own thing. So I was curious how some people either have been following it or not really, not so much. But
I love going to shows. I've always been. I mean, I've been going to concerts since 1979. So, nothing gave me more excitement to go see a gig. And so anytime there was a Christian band, I wasn't one of those types like, oh, why aren't we playing? That wasn't me. I was, let's go have some fun and support and listen to good music.
yeah, it's like, I think, again, I hate to term the Christian metal, but
Sure.
it kind of gets a bad rap, like, oh, it's just a carbon copy or a not as good a copy as a secular band. But there were certain bands, man, that were just, Believer,
Oh, yeah.
you guys, Living Sacrifice, The Crucified. I mean, you guys were as good, if not better, than them. But you guys didn't get the exposure,
Yeah.
because you were in the Christian market.
Yeah. And I loved, I loved all genres of Christian metal. It wasn't just the thrash scene. I mean,
Okay.
Neon Cross, loved them. Barren Cross, thought they were absolutely fantastic.
Yeah.
Blood Good, things like that. Even
Okay.
bands like the Daniel Band, Jerusalem. I mean, those were just. I mean,
Okay,
I just
yeah.
imitated that stuff in my life. Even stuff like Daryl Mansfield and Larry Norman. Love that kind of stuff. Larry Norman was like my absolute favorite. And it's probably one of the only few times I was ever a total fanboy in my life is when I got to meet him while we were doing a show in the mountains at a music festival, Christian music festival, Rock Fest or something, I think it was called. And we got I got to meet Larry Norman. I would totally fanboyed out on him.
So I'm going to ask about this person who's kind of not mysterious, but what was it? Caesar Kalinowski. Like, we know he started Intense Records originally, and he signed Vengeance and Sacred Warrior. Then he sold Intense to Frontline, and then started up Wonderland Records, which you guys get signed to. So what is he like as a person? What was your interactions with him, or none?
Very diplomatic. I mean, he trust me to deal with us. He had the patience of a saint. Let me tell you, my friend. Um, I remember him working with me in the studio on Renaissance, doing, like I said, doing Stroll Through Wicked Age, and he's like, okay, let's get this, Chris. And it was hours and hours, and he didn't get mad, he didn't get frustrated. He was a very patient person. I mean, he was one of the people that taught me. He's like, Chris, I remember we were doing More Faith in Me, and he's like, Chris, you got to do it a different way. You can't keep doing the chorus the same way. You got to change it up. And I'm like, what? This is how I do it. He's like, okay, but it's going to get boring for the listener. You got it. And so he taught me a lot. And so, like, the ending when I do of More Faith in Me was totally Caesar just guiding me and said, do it this way, and teaching me those things. And then when we started working on the passing, I was able to take those things that I learned from Caesar and develop it into what I was doing with the second album.
Yeah, nice. Now, did you have any? So, if I remember correctly, wasn't it distributed by Word?
Yes, yes,
So
it was.
was it in the regular record stores or not really?
No, it was.
Oh, okay.
I remember going to my local Christian bookstore week after week after week, and not knowing the music business and how it really works at the time. I'd go to my Christian bookstore every week and be like, okay, it's the album here, because back then there was no release date type of thing. And
Right.
I don't think there ever was in the Christian market. Well, on this date, this album's coming out. It was just like it appears. Not like today or the internet. Every
Yes.
Thursday at 9 o'clock, I'm sitting there on my iPhone getting ready. Okay, what album's coming out? This week, to download onto my phone. But back then, it would just show up.
Yeah.
And I remember I'd go to my Christian bookstore every week looking for it. I remember first seeing the cassette single come out. It's like, oh, and then it was 6 months between the time finished recording and the album came out. I thought it was never going to come out. All of a sudden, I walked in one day. I'm like, there it
It is. I remember as a fan reading Heaven's Metal and seeing, I mean, there was a lot of promo. You had full page ads saying, I distinctly remember this, call this phone, toll-free number so you can hear clips from the new record.
Mhm.
Every time I called, it was busy.
They Wonderland for Renaissance by Death did a lot of marketing. They
Yeah.
did a lot of marketing push behind it. And then we quickly learned that we had to pay them back for all that marketing.
Oh.
but they gave us a pretty heavy push. I think we were, and not to sound about us,
Yeah.
but I think we were the biggest band on their label. We were
I
the
think
biggest.
so. I mean, there was a few other bands that did okay, but I think you guys were definitely the biggest. Now, did you have, do you to this day have any clue on how many records you sold?
Nope.
It's
I
the
didn't
same.
care. I didn't care. That was not my thing. That was something that fell in Marcus's lap. Marcus was kind of the de facto leader manager of Betrayal.
Okay.
And so he handled all the business end of stuff. And it was basically, my job was show up at band practice, be ready. We got, know when our shows are, be ready to go. Here, we got these opportunities. And then we would have, once a week, we'd have Bible study at Marcus's house and spend time in making sure we were in the Word as a group.
Nice. Okay, so let's move on to the passing. So I think the first one was 91, and then the passing was 93?
93.
93?
93.
So, so you finished the recording the first record. Did you go on a little tour, or?
Every time we tried to go on tour, something happened to kind of stop it. And we just pretty much toured California up and down the coast. And we pretty much, and it was sad that we never really got to go out. We had 2-3 opportunities to go out on the road on tours, and unfortunately they all fell through. I've heard different reasons why, and I'm not going to get into that because I don't want to badmouth anybody, but I think it was an internal thing that kind of damaged us, and not be able to go out on tour with some of these great bands.
Okay. So you finished the little tour that you had. Now, do you go back and start writing? What's the next process leading up to the passing?
It was all through that time. of the passing, where, you know, most of the first album of Renaissance is Martyr tunes brought over and made for Betrayal, and then some new Betrayal tracks. Invitation was a new Betrayal track. Fallen Deceived was actually a Martyr track.
Okay.
That came over. More Faith in Me, that was a Martyr track. No, I'm sorry, that was a Betrayal track. Mortal Flesh was a Martyr track. Escaping the Altar was a Martyr track. Assassins in the Midst was a Betrayal track. Mortal Flesh was, like I said, was Martyr. Stroll Through Wicked Age was a strictly Betrayal track. Prophets was a Betrayal track, and Plead the Blood was Martyr. And then so this one, it had to be all Betrayal. So, and Matt Mainers had left the band because he wanted to focus mainly on the Terminal Generation. And so he was going more in that industrial vibe. And so he left, and then Brian Muse left because he moved away and he was getting into being a real estate professional. So he and his wife had moved away to Desert Hot Springs, and it was just too much for him to come out from Desert Hot Springs to Sierra Madre for band practice. And it was just starting to put a strain. So he's like, I got to step back.
Yep.
And so we got Bob and Jeff Mason in the band, and Jeff wrote, for the second album, Jeff came, I think he first came with Whispers of Chaos. And I love that song. And it's my daughter's favorite Betrayal song. She just loves that track. And then, you know, Marcus was writing, and then Marcus said, hey, Chris, you want to write some lyrics or something? And I said, yeah. He goes, I wrote some music. Let's see what you come up with. And at the time, I was How the Usurper came along, which I always want to, it's one of those times in your life where you always want to kick yourself. I should have called the song The Acid King, but I thought I was being clever by doing a little nod to Celtic Frost. Stupid of me. I should have called the song The Acid King. When they did the remaster, I begged them to change the title, and they said they couldn't. And I'm like, I said, call it The Acid King, formerly The Usurper. But how that song came about is a song, if you know about Ricky Queso, who was a murderer on the East Coast. And the reason why I wrote that song at the time was I was working in production in Hollywood on music videos and TV commercials. And one of my clients was the Family Channel. And they hired me for this show. It was kind of one of those, you know, like you see now, it's on TV America's Most Funniest Videos.
Yeah.
Well, this was a show like that before that came along on the Family Channel. I can't remember the name of it, but my job was to go to the writer's house every day, and they would watch these videos, and they would write the script for the voiceover artist, and they would give it to me, and then I would drive it over to the producer's house, and I would just go back and forth. Well, this went on for months, and sometimes I would sit there for hours in their house just waiting for them to finish these scripts. And one day I was walking, looking at a vast library of books, and they had this book called Say You Love Satan, and it was a true crime book. And I thought, well, I got something to do. I go, hey, can I read this book? And they're like, yeah. And so I started reading this book, and I just came engrossed in it. And after we were done with the show, they had written like 2 seasons worth of script for these videos. It was done. And when I left the writer's house the last time, they said, Chris, we have a gift for you. And they gave me the book. And I was like, wow, thanks a lot. And I still have it on my bookshelf today. So when it came time to write, I thought, this is something that's kind of fresh in my mind, and let's just see what I come up with, and wrote my one and only song for Betrayal.
Nice.
And it just kind of came along slowly. When it came time to record, things were, things were a lot different. We didn't fly to Elgin that time, and we didn't have, even though it sounds sonically much better than Renaissance by Death, we didn't have, the budget wasn't there where it was like kick back in Elgin, Illinois for a month. It was literally a week and a half to 2 weeks to get everything done.
Yeah.
So it was a rush.
And sometimes I noticed that sometimes it comes out better. Sometimes bands take too much time, and they keep tweaking it, and it kind of loses the essence. So sometimes doing it fast and quick, you get the rawness. Sometimes it depends.
Yeah, I was talking to someone about this the other day, and I don't understand. I think it was you I was talking to about this, but I don't understand the whole concept of of producing and mastering tracks, because when we sat in Elgin after we finished all the vocals and the solos for Renaissance by Death, we sat in the studio at Wonderland Records, and Caesar played us a whole album. And I was blown away. I'm like, oh my gosh, this thing sounds so good. People are going to flip over this thing. And then Marcus and Caesar went to New York to master the album. And when he came back, he had it on cassette. And I listened to it. I'm like, what's wrong with this? It sounds tinny and weird.
Yeah.
This is what it sounded like at Wonderland. And I thought maybe it's just because it's a cassette recording, maybe it's not good. And then a few months later, we got initial CDs given to us, and I put on the CD and it sounded the same. And I was just gutted. I'm like, why does this sound like this? This isn't the way it's supposed to sound.
Yeah.
Luckily, we didn't get that with the passing. The passing sounds rich and full and deep. And, so, but it had a lot to do with our engineer, Gordon Shumway, which is because it's really a quite famous metal producer that produced that album. So don't believe the credits.
So who produced it? So shh. I won't tell anybody. Yeah, really. No. Actually, the person who was in the studio with us, none other than Bill Matoyer. Oh, okay.
So Bill Matoyer is Gordon Shumway. I think now that 30 years have passed, I can comfortably say that without by Wonderland. But Bill Matoyer was actually the producer of the passing.
Now, is there a reason why?
Caesar hired him, and basically you had how do I put this? You had two levels of payment. One, you pay the higher cost, you get to say this album is produced by Bill Matoyer. You pay the lower tier, you get to put engineered by Gordon Shumway.
So
Don't ask me, man.
I
just sing the tracks.
That's crazy. That's good to know. I never knew that.
Yeah.
So, you had mentioned earlier Christopher Scott, and he sang a track on this record along with Jimmy Brown from Deliverance. So how did that come to be? And was that something you guys planned, or did you just want to try to get some names on?
No, it was planned. Marcus wanted singing on this album, and I went to vocal coach after vocal coach trying to learn how to sing, and I just couldn't do it. And I just said I can't. And so that's why Christopher Scott was brought in to do As I Turned Away, because I just couldn't do it. On the same end of it, because I only had a couple days to do all the vocals for that album, unlike having 2 weeks when we did Renaissance.
Right.
When I did, you can really hear it in Forest of Horrors. I blew my voice out. I was losing my voice during Forest of Horrors, and I had to take a few days off to rest my voice. And so during that time, Chris, who I knew was coming in to do As I Turned Away, but then Jimmy Brown being brought in to do whatever the song he did, I can't remember what it is now. I did not know that, and I was a little frustrated with that because Marcus was supposed to sing those parts. Because Marcus on Renaissance did some of the singing parts, and I thought that was good, and I don't think we should have changed that, but that was a Marcus decision. Like I said, I had taken a couple days off to not talk and get my voice back so I could finish the album.
Right. So that gets released, and then did you do another little tour just in California? Or how quick, I guess, does this lead to the band breakup, or how did all that work after the record?
Pretty quick it led up, because if you look in the center of that card that you have of the booklet, open up
the booklet. Yeah.
Okay, go to the center spread. Okay, look at my face. See my face? That's the face of someone who doesn't want to be in the band anymore. Okay, I was kind of emotionally checked out at that point. And I believe for even myself at that point, I think our vision had changed within the band from ministry to making it.
Yeah.
And that's where the kind of the focus became, and a lot of the discussions became about. And I think we lost what God put us there for. And that's my personal opinion. I'm not going to speak for anybody else, but that's what my personal opinion is. And the album had come out, and word had come down to us that Interscope Records was very interested in Betrayal.
Yeah.
So this would mean Caesar would be able to sell the contract to Interscope. We'd be signed to a major label.
Yeah.
And so we had a couple showcase gigs set up. Wonderland bought all the tickets for it, said give them out to the fans. We need this place packed out. We did a 2-night stint at the Whiskey. First night was kind of a practice for us, and the second night was the actual showcase. There was some major sound issues due to not what I found out later was not greasing the palms of the sound guy and the lighting guy at the Whiskey, because they knew it was a showcase and made up of ex-musicians who are jealous. And we go on stage that night, packed house, all of our fans. Sound, we can't hear anything through the monitors. I can't tell what's going on. I can't hear Marcus. I can't hear the bass. It's just a mess. And on the other side of that, there was a lot of big artists at the time signed to Interscope. Well, one of the artists signed to Interscope was a guy by the name of Tom Jones. They sent his A&R guy to see Betrayal. So I think he got about 2 songs into it, and he's like, no, we're not doing this, and walked out. And afterwards, we knew we had a disastrous show. And Caesar walked into the dressing room and says, well, you blew that one. And he goes, you spent over your budget that we have for the passing, and you're kind of done. And there was one full color ad that came out in Heaven's Metal right after the passing came out. And I have it framed in my office at home. And that was it. There was no marketing push for the passing after that. And they kind of just said, we're done. And we were left on our own devices. And then the accident in Texas, on the way to Texas and New Mexico, and the lawsuit, and that just kind of just destroyed everything. And that was it. But there were still good times during that period of going to Utrecht, Holland, with Decision D. They brought us over for the God's Thrash Festival, which was absolutely fantastic time.
Nice.
And then we came back. We did a show with Tourniquet at the did a couple of other shows around town. I remember one we did. I think it was in like in East Hollywood, I think, or something like that. And we had this band, and I'm like watching them play on stage. They're opening for us, and I'm thinking, man, these guys are going to be the next thing, and they're going to overpass us. And it was Mortal.
Oh,
And they were opening for us, brand new, and I was just like, oh boy, change is coming to the scene.
Now, how did they play live? Because I know they're kind of industrial. Did they actually play instruments, or was it more?
It was keyboard. I think it was, if I remember correctly, it was keyboards. And then don't quote me, I think we did another show where POD opened for us around that time.
Oh wow,
And it was like, okay, something's changing in the scene.
The scene changed, and
Marcus was getting more into industrial music, things like that. And but the band had its time, and we our last show we ever did was in Fresno, a sold out show, was us and Tourniquet. And that was it. And after that, it wasn't like this is our last show. It was just after that show, people just started leaving the band till it was just left to Marcus and I.
Yeah.
And then he one day he called me, and I had moved at that point from Los Angeles to Apple Valley, where I live now. And he called me. He says, what we're going to do is we're not going to tour anymore. We're just going to make albums. You and I will just make albums. I could do the instruments. We'll get a drummer in, and you and I'll just make albums. And I just said, no, I'm done. I'm tired, and I'm done.
Yeah.
And that was the end of it. And I put everything away in a box and turned my back on the Lord.
So what has life been like since you left Betrayal? What's it been like for you?
Well, it was funny though. When Bob McHugh and Jeff Lane joined the band. They lived in this little desert town called Hesperia, California, while Marcus, Jeff, and I lived in Los Angeles. So we used to come up to this town of Hesperia and just kind of jam when we started writing The Passing there and things like that at the house and just kind of getting to know each other. And one night, Bob's wife said to me, she goes, Chris, would you ever consider moving to the high desert? And I said, there's no way in hell I'm ever moving to this desert rat hole. So a couple months go by, we come back up here to Hesperia, do some writing, and Bob's wife again says, hey, you want to meet a nice Christian girl? And I'm like, yeah, sure, whatever. And it was her nail tech, and her name was Leanne, and we met and fell in love, and we've been almost married now, almost 30 years.
Wow. Congratulations.
Thank you. And we live in up here in the high desert, and have a great family. Have a wonderful son who's just finishing up attending the University of Arizona with a degree in communications and marketing, following the old man's footsteps. And then I have a daughter who just graduated with high honors from high school and was a prom queen, and she's on a pathway to be a dental hygienist. So.
Okay. Nice.
Some scholarships, and she'll be moving on to that career choice of hers to be a dental hygienist. And life is good. I get to serve the underserved in our community through public transportation. I head up a marketing department and public information officer. And then I took my singing voice and became a professional sports announcer 16 years ago, where I mainly do speedway and flat track motorcycle racing at different tracks throughout Southern California. And I MC different events. I do summer concerts in the park. I MC those for a couple different cities, and do big festivals like the Freedom Festival for the town of Apple Valley. I've been doing that for 15 years, and I'll be doing that this coming up July 4th as my character, Crazy Chris.
So even though you left the music scene, you were still involved in audio, radio, broadcasting. So you never really left, Chris.
Yeah, but I was never a sports guy. I was always a music guy.
Yeah.
And after Betrayal ended, I was working graphic design in a print shop, and there was a guy who came in looking for sponsorships for a local track. Now, right before this time happened, my boss had sent me to Dale Carnegie. And I remember when he told me he was sending me to Dale Carnegie, and I'm like, why? I'm a graphic designer. I'm not a salesperson. Why would you send me to sales course? And he goes, no, I see something in you that you haven't seen yet. I'm sending you to the public speaking course. And I'm like, nope. He goes, I'm paying for it. You're going. I ended up graduating with the highest award of achievement from my own classmates, Dale Carnegie. And I left there thinking, I'm a public speaker now.
Yeah.
I was horrible at it. I started doing business speeches, stuff that didn't really motivate me, and I was horrible at it. So one day, this guy's looking for sponsorship for the local track. And he says, what we really need at that racetrack is a good announcer, because we've got this English guy who no one can understand a word he's saying. So my boss happened to say, well, you should talk to my senior graphic artist. He's a professional public speaker. So the guy comes over to me and he goes, have you ever heard of speedway motorcycle racing? And I said, no. He goes, have you ever been to a motorcycle race before? I go, nope. He goes, how'd you like to announce one? I said, sure. What does it pay? He goes, $50. I said, all right. So I show up at the track that Saturday night, and this English guy who's the head promoter says, well, I don't know. I should pay you. I've never heard you talk before. And I said, fine, don't pay me. I don't care. We'll do tonight. If you like what you hear, we'll work together again. If you don't, I really don't care. I got 3 races in. He turns to me, he goes, you are so hired for this job, and I'm never letting you go. Man, you're flipping crazy. And that's how my moniker Crazy Chris came. And I've grown that in, and he and I still put on races together. Even today, we have a race together in Bakersfield on June 22nd, an AMA championship series race. And I've broken out with other promoters, other racing. I've done minor league baseball, football for CBS Sports Radio affiliate. And I've just developed this wonderful career that I love to do, where I get to be that entertainer still. And I always laugh because we talked about this in the interview, about how when I was on stage with Betrayal, I didn't know what to say. between the songs. And Marcus and these guys, they'd be tuning down to D, boom, boom. And it was like, and I would be sitting on the mic just trying to say something to the crowd. And in my head, I'm going, hurry up, hurry up, hurry up, hurry up, because I had nothing to say. I was like that guy to go out there and go, hello, Cleveland, nothing to say. If Betrayal had ever gotten back together today, oh my gosh, these guys would be waiting 5 minutes after they tune their guitars and be going, will this guy ever shut his mouth? Because I'd be going blah, 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 blah the whole time to the audience. So there you go. That's how things change.
Yeah, I mean, I have to, in the same vein, like, I didn't even like get my picture taken. Now I'm doing a YouTube show, doing interviews, and it's like even at my age, God is still expanding us to bring us where He wants us to be.
Yeah,
I know I'm supposed to be here and doing what I'm doing. So it's cool to see God move, in your life.
It is. When I first came back to the Lord in 2018, one thing I really felt very clear from the Lord was you are not going to be a Sunday Christian anymore. You know what a Sunday Christian is? One that goes to church on Sunday, say, I'm good for the week, live however they want to live during the week, and then come back Sunday. God says you're not going to do that anymore. You're going to get involved. And people in my first church were like, hey, do you want to do graphic design? Do you want to do this? Do you want to do this in media? And I was like, nope, that's not it. That's not it. And then one day this little woman came up on the stage and says, we need volunteers to read Bible stories to kindergartners and first graders. And God goes, that's where you're supposed to be. I'm like, okay. And I signed up and I started doing that. And that led me into youth ministry, where I was doing a couple of years leading high school boys in youth ministry. And then God put us at a new church about a year ago. And immediately I thought, well, obviously I was a youth leader there. I'm going to be a youth leader here. And I went to a couple of youth group meetings, and I felt very clearly from the Lord, nope, this is not what you're supposed to be doing. And at first I didn't want to listen, of course. And finally it's like, no, this is not where I'm putting you. And I'm like, okay. And I backed off. And now in this church, I'm blessed to lead the photography team. So I'm behind the camera. And it's such a blessing because we take photos there for all the events and put them out online. And these photos are so important because, if you see ads, the reason why you have these beautiful women in ads, because the whole thing in marketing is people want to look at those ads and they want to see themselves in there and say, I want to be that person. And that's how you sell things. And it's the same thing in ministry, to where people see our photos and say, I want to feel like they're feeling. And we capture, and that's what our ministry is capture that imagery. So people who are far from God see those photos and say, I want that. And they come to our church. And our church is a great church. It's Life Church in Victorville, California. And we're a church for people who don't have it all together.
Anybody that says they have it all together doesn't have it all together.
Exactly.
Did you get word about the reissues? This is 2019?
Yeah, so what happened was,
2019?
and I was, rebuilding my spiritual life, my relationship with the Lord, getting involved in my church, and I get this message on my phone from this guy saying, are you Chris Ackerman from Betrayal? Now, during those 20 years I was away, I would get maybe one of those type of emails or messages about once every 2 or 3 years. And I would literally say, no, you have the wrong guy. I'm not that guy. That's how much I was away from Betrayal. And I was like, no, I have nope. Yeah, I'm not a guy from that band. You have me mistaken for somebody else. I mean, that's how bad my relationship was with the Lord. But I said, yeah. And he's like, hey, I own this record label called Girded Music. We bought the rights for the remaster from Caesar. We're going to do your albums with bonus tracks, blah, blah, blah. And he says, the only thing is I don't have anything and to put in there. And I said, okay. And I said, I got boxes of stuff. Let me send it all to you and do what you want with it. And so I sent it all to them and didn't have a say in anything else, like how it was going to sound, anything like that. It was just all in them. And I just gave that to him. So all the stuff you see inside the booklets is all stuff from my collection, photos, things like that. And then I said, hey, do you want me to write any liner notes for it? And he goes, yeah. So I started writing these liner notes for it. And after I finished and I sent it to him, he said very sarcastically, he's like, well, thanks a lot. And I go, what? He goes, now I have to change it from an 8 book to a 12 book. because of all the words you wrote. And I'm like, sorry. And that's how that came about. And that started a little resurgence. Our album's coming out again on CD and vinyl for the first time, which was actually pretty cool to have your, and I think about that a lot nowadays. I'm thinking, how lucky am I that I actually got my voice on vinyl?
Yeah.
And so it kind of came out, had a little resurgence, a little bit. I mean, we don't have thousands of fans out there. We've got hundreds, maybe, that still remember and
Maybe a little more than that, but
and like Betrayal. And we, and it kind of came and it died, and it's all good. And I'm like, I wasn't trying to be, I'm not trying to be a rock star again. Trust me, I did that road. I'm done with that. And it was funny. And I kind of said, Lord, that was cool. Thank you very much. And then I started hearing stories from people who were influenced by us, things, and it was really nice. And then, what was it? What year are we in? 2021. So we'll skip over another year, and I'm just living my life, what I do for a living. And I'm taking my daughter to church camp, and she was attending. I was a volunteer counselor. And I get this email from Germany thinking, this is odd. And I read it. And it's this guy, Kalen, from this band Adorned Graves. And he tells me, he goes, you were a huge influence on me growing up. He goes, when I was 17 years old, I drove from Germany to Utrecht, Holland, just to see you in concert.
Oh, cool.
And I have a band called Adorned Graves. We're doing our third album right now. And we want to know if you'll sing a song on the album. And I'm like, I haven't sung or screamed like that in 30 years. Come on now. And he's like, well, do you want to do it or not? And I said, yeah, I'll give it a shot. So he sent me the song. He sent me guide vocals and the lyrics. And I kind of said, hey, because it's kind of German and English, I'm going to change these around a little bit. He's like, yeah, do whatever you want with it. So found the drummer for our worship band at my church, has a studio at his home, and he says, yeah, come on over and belt out the tracks. So I brought my son Liam and my daughter Aubrey with me, because they're big music fanatics as well, like their old man. and we did this song. And my son was he does some part-time audio engineering for an R&B artist. And so he was doing the engineering, and my daughter was kind of filming, taking pictures for the marketing side of it. And I did this song called Vaults and Caverns. And at the end, and right before the end, where I do a 9.5-second scream, I didn't know I still had in me. I told my kids, I said, why don't you get on the mic with me and let's do the background vocals together? So we made it kind of a family affair, and it was really, really nice. So the band's called Adorned Graves, and it's their latest album. The Earth Has, I can't think of the name. Sorry right now. Let me look on my phone. And put my glasses on because I am an old man.
I know. What's a hit like 45? Like your eyes start to go.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, the earth hath opened her mouth, and I do a song on there called Vaults and Caverns, and it was a whole lot of fun. And so I did that song, and I thought, okay, God, thanks, that was cool. Not over yet. A few months later, I get a call from Seth Matoyer in Northern California, and he says, I have this band called Mangled Carpenter, and you were a huge influence on me. Got to see you in concert, and I'm doing our second album right now. I want to do, if you'll do some guest vocals on a track. And so I did that, and went to this, my friend's studio, recorded that song, and that's out now. It's called A Path to Sorrow. And I thought, okay, that's it. Then I was contacted by Bill Rocks from Rocks Records. And he says, I have a band out of Atlanta, Georgia that is they're starting to work on their second album, and they want to cover a Betrayal song and want to know if you'll do vocals on it with them.
Oh, cool.
And I'm like, come on now. And he's like, can I introduce you to the head of the band, Ryan Roebuck? And I said, sure. And it's band Motivik. And he said, when I was, I survived the 1993 mowing lawns, listening to The Passing on headphones. goes, we want to do the song Renouncement. Want to know if you'll do it. So I went back in the studio again. I'm not going now. You have to remember, I'm not going online going, hey, I'm the ex-singer of Betrayal. You want me to sing on your album? I'm letting the Lord open these doors. I'm not trying to push any doors open. I'm just doing my thing, focusing my life, my relationship with the Lord and my family, and then everything else underneath of that. Because for 20 years, it was Crazy Chris, the sports announcer, and everything else under that. I've had to change that in my life. And so I went in, and 32 years after the fact, I re-recorded Renouncement. And
Cool.
you know, in that song contained sound samples from a movie called Spellbinder. And Motivic asked me to re-record all the speaking parts from the sound samples. So I did that as well. The album will be out on July 1st, and I am excited for people to hear it because it's awesome. And
I gotta pick that up.
and this album, I've had the album for, the whole album for quite a bit of time. It's going to change and really impact the Christian metal industry. People have no idea what they're about to hear.
Nice.
I can't, I'm not just saying that because I sing on a part of a song on this album. This album will blow you away. It is that good.
Awesome. That's definitely
Get
gonna.
ready.
I gotta have to pick
Get
that up
ready.
now.
I cannot encourage all of your viewers enough. You have to hear this album when it comes out on July 1st.
Nice.
It is going to be a classic, considered a classic Christian metal album. It's that good.
Cool. Something to look forward to.
Oh yeah. Get
Um,
excited like the old days.
Yeah, like the old days. I know we're getting some of that back. So does Betrayal have any merch at all? Do you know, Chris?
Really the core that really talk about the band still connect is myself, Bob McHugh, and Jeff Lane. And Jeff designed all the early shirts. I still have a collection in my house that no, I will not sell to anybody. Those are my kids when I pass away. But I did a short run for a while of some Reviling Darkness t-shirts. I redesigned everything and did a short run. But Ladislav Prado and I, we have a site, a Big Cartel site where we sell martyr shirts.
Okay.
And these are,
I'll put that in the description down below. What the website is, I'll put that down. People can check that out.
and I redesigned our Imminent Warfare shirt, and then our Punk Skull shirt, and those are being sold there. And so it's really just I have a printer friend of mine who gives me a massive discount on them, and whatever orders come in, they do one print run a month, and we sell just to make sure that any fans that want martyr shirts can have them. And there's been some discussion about some Betrayal shirts, but it's something that Jeff Lane and I need to continue to discuss, because he has all the original artwork. He did all the original artwork for him. I redrew, like I said, Reviling Darkness, but I want to give Jeff the grace and the respect that he deserves for doing that, and not just sell it because I can't. So
Yeah.
so he and I are in discussions for that to actually release more Betrayal shirts out to the public. So
Yeah,
forthcoming, I should hopefully say.
Yeah, cool. All right, Chris, I want to thank you for being on the show, and I appreciate you sharing all these stories for being in Betrayal and partly Martyr. And we look forward to hearing you on the new Motivic CD, and hopefully maybe some other things in the future. Chris, is there anything in parting that you want to say to your fans that have either enjoyed you back in the early 90s and are looking forward to hearing you sing some new things coming soon? What would you like to say to your fans?
What I would love to talk about is those of you out there that are struggling with your faith like I did. You may be in the wilderness right now for a long time. When I announce a race at a motorcycle track, I tell the promoter that I need to do an invocation, and they always allow me to do it. And I always end my invocations the same way. And I'm going to end it with you here today like this. You know, when I came back to the Lord in 2018, what got me there was a text message from my brother-in-law who said, you need to ask Jesus to show you how real he is in ways you can't imagine. So I'm going to share this with you all today. If you're struggling with depression, heartbreak, anger issues, addiction, whatever it may be that keeps you up at night, keeps you being unable to hold your head up high and look at yourself in the mirror, please ask Jesus to show you how real he is in ways you can't imagine, and allow him to do that. I want to thank you all the fans out there who have listened to Betrayal, who were edified by it, who were guided by it, who were ministered to by it. But the only one that is there all the time who loves you is Jesus Christ.
Yes.
And if you're struggling, place your faith back into him. Ask Jesus to show you how real he is in ways you can't imagine.
Chris, thank you so much for being on the show. And thank you for sharing not just betrayal stories, but your personal life and your personal struggles, because we all struggle. We all have our peaks and valleys in our walk. So I want to thank you for sharing, your personal story.
Here's what I say. If you're suffering from pain, addiction, sadness, loneliness, heartbreak, anger issues, whatever it might be that keeps you from being able to look at yourself in the mirror and hold your head up high, please ask Jesus to show you how real he is in ways you can't imagine, and let him do it. Thank you very much.
Absolutely. All right, Chris, thank you so much for being on the show.
Thanks, man.
And God bless you.
Appreciate it.
See ya. Bye-bye.
Bye.
I appreciate your comments on my remasters, and I had sent them to Prado too, and he was like, "Oh yeah, I think he said they're in talks with Rox about reissuing the Martyr stuff."
Yeah. So Prado and I have been in discussion. The original Porterville Martyr has gotten back together, and they're going to be they're working on an album right now, and there may be a few surprises on there. Can't say anything more than that, but you never know.
Yeah.
And Prado and I reconnected after 25 years away from each other, and we've solidified our friendship again. And
yeah, there's such a huge fan base for Martyr, even though they were never signed. I just recently got the demos from somebody. How would these guys not get signed? I'm like,
yeah,
it's so good.
You know what? Christian metal and demos, they made some magical stuff. Okay. Human Sacrifice, Greetings of Death.
Yeah. Deliberate.
My Life by Neon Cross, a Christian band by One Bad Pig, Death is Dead by Martyr. These demos are such classics. And I still, all these years later, I still listen to those demos today. Two of my favorite Betrayal songs, the most to me were Fear Be Gone and our mission statement, Plead the Blood. And you did a fantastic job on bringing those songs out, because I was never happy with the final sound of those. Even in the remaster, I wasn't thrilled with it.
Yeah.
But you did some really good stuff with that. And my number one critic is my daughter.
Your daughter is.
And
I'm like, I got to make them happy.
And I drive her to the gym every day, and I play your remasters, and she's like, he's got it. She is my ears, and if she says it's good, she's like, Dad, nothing more needs to be done. This is perfect. I'm like, that's all I gotta listen to.
That's why when I did the Martyr stuff, I'm like, what songs would you like me to remaster, or to try to? And
War Circus was such a good track, and the what I call the LA Martyr started practicing that song. They started rehearsing that song before the split, and it sounded pretty incredible with the
remaster. Kind of, if you listen to earbuds or earphones, it goes from like this to like this.
Yeah,
and that's I'm like, I can make this better. I can
no, for sure.
You're like, just like when you heard the songs you weren't happy with, you're like, this could be better.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's what I'm like,
Yeah, no.
taking old demos and remastering them. I think that's where, and I searched the internet. I couldn't find anybody that does this,
Mhm.
taking old stuff and making it sound better. So I
Yeah.
think I may have a niche.
There you go. There you
So,
go. Praise God.
Um,
Well, I wish you best of luck, but you have a total thumbs up from this guy on what you did with the Betrayal and War Circus for Martyr.